What's up, everybody? It's Mover. Welcome to Mondays with Mover Live. I'm with Lieutenant Commander retired Scott Special Edwards, former Marine, Navy pilot, squadron mate, and he will be with us to talk about his career as a Marine Hornet pilot, F-5 pilot, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So without further ado, let's see if this is working. Hi, Special. Welcome.
Mover, how you doing? Good to see you again, buddy.
See, this is why we train. We can see Special, but we can't hear him. So there we go. So welcome to the channel. Thanks for everything. We cannot mention Chuck Yeager, which means we have to say Chuck Yeager as many times as possible because I just want to go ahead and get rid of the demonetization problems altogether. So you and I know each other. We were served together VFA 204, but before that, you were a Marine fighter pilot flying the Hornet. Tell me, how did you become a fighter pilot?
So, you want me to go all the way back to what piqued my interest?
Perfect. How did you, yeah, like just start from the beginning. Give me the, why did you want to do this job of all the jobs? Because I know you were on a path to be a neurosurgeon or some kind of scientist or something. So what made Special join the Marines?
Okay, so there I was, 9 months old.
All right.
Sorry,
I love it. I love it. Start from the beginning. We've got all night.
So 9 months old, I moved from Michigan to Connecticut, and across the street was an American Airlines pilot who had just gotten off active duty and was a Navy F-8 pilot.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So growing up, you know, all the way until I was in middle school, we lived across the street from them. And, so, you know, he always showed me pictures. They always had pictures hanging all over the wall. He had videos. They had their own airplane.
Oh,
so,
wow.
You know, they would show me all kinds of stuff, take me flying in his airplane. And his son also joined the Navy. It was a Tomcat guy.
Tomcats.
Tomcats.
Tomcats. Go ahead.
He actually lives about 3 miles from me here in Dallas.
Oh, cool.
So, I mean, I just naval aviation was just something that I'd known forever. So I don't even remember a time where I wanted to be anything other than, you know, a naval aviator. So when I was in 3rd grade, he flew me down in his airplane down to Norfolk.
Yeah.
We went out on a family day on an aircraft carrier.
Oh, nice.
And we're there and stuff, and you know, it was just that was really the cement where I was
nice.
Like, okay,
yeah.
you know, I just remember seeing, you know, the A-6 intruders and Tomcats and stuff flying around off the deck and doing flybys, and the hangar was just jammed with airplanes, and it was just it was awesome. So that is
wow.
It's really how I got interested.
Did Top Gun play anywhere into this? I mean, obviously that was '86.
So yeah. So when Top Gun came out, I was in I don't even remember. I guess I was in junior high or something, maybe even a little bit earlier.
The best time, junior high kid watching Top Gun.
I know, and I knew I was I do actually remember seeing the advertisement for Top Gun coming on, and I was just like,
yes.
I'm like, Mom,
Mom, yes, yes.
So when every kid's dream is to see Top Gun with their mom and their grandmother.
No. Well,
you know,
yeah.
So there was, you know, Top Gun. That was a great movie, but I was already sold. In aviation, you know. So.
Well,
but,
cool.
You know, it's always fun seeing those intimate scenes
with your mom. Take my breath away. Mom, don't look. Yeah.
So,
wow.
Well, so yeah, from then on, it just.
So I mean, did you go, what was your commissioning? Like, did you go to regular college, clown college, academy?
So I did. I went to a regular clown college, not the academy. Um, they would have never let me in the academy anyway, so I didn't even try.
Okay.
So I graduated from Purdue, and I went into the Marines as through this thing called the platoon leadership course.
Okay.
So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but unlike ROTC, the platoon leadership course will give you no money and guidance whatsoever.
Very Marine-like.
Yeah, to help you with college. But what they will give you is 2 filled summers in Quantico, Virginia, going through officer candidate school.
Oh, it sounds lovely. How was that?
Yeah, so that was so I went. You could do it one of two ways. You can go 2 summers for 6 weeks each, or you could do 1 summer if you ended up, joining. If you were a senior in college or had graduated or something, they go for 10 weeks. So I got the bonus program. I went for 2 6 weeks.
Oh, nice.
And 2 summers in a row. And the best part was after the first summer, I got to know every night when I went to bed that the next summer I had to go back.
Yeah, that sucks.
I remember talking to this guy at the chow hall, like the day before I was about to, leave OCS my first summer. And I was like, oh, he's like, I'm like, dude, I can't believe you got to stay here like another 5 weeks. He goes, yeah, man, but you got to come back next summer. I was like, I don't care, man. Just get me off this island now. And just.
Was that a guaranteed pilot slot, or did you not know?
Yes. So that was the best part of the best part of the platoon leadership course, or one of them, is that when you signed on the dotted line, you had a guaranteed flight slot.
Nice.
Now, there could be things, you hadn't taken a full, medical examination. So there were things that could keep you away from, keep you out of the pipeline. But generally it was really just, the NAMI whammy. I don't know if you've talked about that on.
No, but please remind us of the NAMI whammy for those that don't remember.
So NAMI is Naval Aviation Medical, whatever.
Institute.
Something.
Yep, you got it.
Institute. Yeah. And it's when you go to Pensacola, before you start flight training, they give you, I don't even remember how many days it was, but head to toe, everything.
It's enough. It's enough.
And, of course, it's the best doctors in the world, right? So they're giving you their all. But really, other than that, the PLC program was great because you had a guaranteed flight slot. But just as important is, I remember my officer selection officer saying, he was like, Scott, the Marine Corps is not necessarily looking for the guy with the best grades. He's like, the Marine Corps is looking for, I'm like, I'm in.
So what did you major in college?
So I majored in aviation.
Okay.
So I went all the way up through my CFII, my instrument instructor certificate, because that was kind of like my plan B. Yeah. So if something happened, medically or who knows, whatever, I could still pursue, aviation in some fashion.
Yeah. Did NAMI give you any medical problems or anything, or was it pretty smooth sailing?
No, it was pretty smooth sailing, but I did know guys. Actually, my roommate one of my roommates in Pensacola, he got what we called the NAMI whammy, and it was something with his eyes. It was they do some weird things to your eyes, and you would never even know, and they would say, hey, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It was something, and he's never had any eye problems to this day. And then of course you always get the guys who something was wrong and they were totally caught off guard, and then maybe they sneak back in line and do it again, and then they pass second time.
Yeah, probably can't do that anymore. Yeah. So after that, I mean, you just graduated college. Next day, you're off to flight school now at this point?
So, the Marine Corps, everybody is a rifleman first,
That's
right?
true.
So for the Marines, before you go to flight school, you get to go back to Quantico in I
This is
would
the
say in a more gentlemanly,
this is the third time, right? This is now
this would be my third time.
trip
This,
3.
this time is for 6 months. So you go there for 6 months, and basically the Marine Corps' philosophy is, we're combined arms. You have support. You've got the ground combat element, and then you have the aviation element. So what they want to do is they want to bring, all of their officers into one setting and give everybody a baseline knowledge. So, even though you're a pilot, you'll know a little bit about logistics. You know even more about infantry stuff and motor T and administrative or whatever. So once you get into a leadership position, if you have logistics problems or you're thinking of something, you're like, hey, I'm just going to call my buddy, my rack mate from TBS. He went to be a logistician, and there you go. You got a buddy, and it's just, you kind of just get this common knowledge. So
was it tough? I mean, is it like physically demanding, or is it just more instructional?
So you have weeks in the classroom, and then you have weeks, out in the field. We did runs and stuff, but it was less. Way less physically demanding than OCS, which is more of a weed out portion. The basic school is more of a, it's just more of a grooming instructional thing.
Yeah.
So where there was a lot of physical stuff, it wasn't anything. If you made it through OCS, it's no problem once you get to the basic school.
And then from there, what's the pipeline for a Marine aviator?
So there's basically, 3 different pipelines. You have the jets. Well, I guess there's more now, but because you have everybody goes down to Pensacola. Did you go through Pensacola at all?
No, I all Air Force stuff. So I just did the CAT other, and that's it for the Navy.
Yeah, so we have this thing called API, which was I don't know, aviation something indoctrination.
Primary
Indoctrination. So that's basically just 6 weeks of just like classes, aerodynamics, stuff like aviation classes, and then half the day or the morning you'd be in the swim doing all your, swim phys stuff.
Yeah.
Then after that, everybody would either go to Whiting Field in Pensacola, or they'd go down to NAS Corpus Christi. And from there, everybody flew. At that time, it was the T-34 Charlie. Nice. Turbo Mentor.
What was that like?
For me, because I'd already flown, it wasn't bad at all.
Yeah.
It was just like flying in a high-powered, 172 or something.
Yeah.
It was a pretty cool airplane. Now they have the T6, which I never.
So the bailout of that thing, right? You got to slide the canopy, you got to climb out over the wing and stuff.
Slide the canopy, then you got to unbuckle, and then you got to climb out over the wing, and it was very effective.
Yeah, 0-0, definitely 0-0.
I think one guy actually did it.
Wow. So. From there, I mean, so obviously, do you think the flight experience really helped you? Was it very different? Did you have to unlearn anything?
No, not at all. And it was like that with a lot of guys, but I don't really know if it's really a game changer, because you'll see, the guys who've had flight instruction, they'll catch on very quickly. The other guys, it'll be a little bit steeper learning curve, but eventually those lines parallel, and everybody's kind of on the same sheet of music.
So is that where, if you make the grades in T-34s, that's how you decide? Did you fly T-45s, or what was after that?
I did. So you either went through the jet pipeline, the helo pipeline, props, which is C-130s, and then I don't know if there's a different pipeline now for, and I don't know if for the Osprey. I think
Yeah, there's helicopters. I mean, there's a
I don't know what
helicopter
they,
pipeline.
yeah, so I don't know if they go through the prop pipeline and then the helicopter, if they do helicopters and then go and fly the T-44, which is like the King Air 200 or something, or maybe
Yeah.
it's a B-90 or something. So they may be doing something. So yeah, right out of there, I went to Kingsville and flew T-45s.
And you're just integrated. I mean, as far as anybody's concerned at this point, Navy, Marines, it's pretty much the same, right? I mean, they're
Yeah.
not treating you any differently.
Well, up until that point, so the Coast Guard goes through the Navy program, and then we had a bunch of Air Force guys too.
Yeah.
We may have had some foreign military, but at that time it was just one or two, maybe a German guy or two, and that was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotta have a couple German guys.
Duh. Yeah. Not no Jaegers though, right? There were no Jaegers in
Chuck Jaegers. No Chuck Jaegers.
Yeah, with the J, a soft J. So T-45s, you fly the A or is that the C? What was?
So I flew the C, in which they had in Kingsville, and then they had a C version up in Meridian. And
Okay.
I don't know too much about the differences. I think the C version had an INS, and the HUD, there was a velocity vector in the HUD.
Yeah.
We didn't have that. So when you were flying onto the boat, you only had the chevrons.
Wow.
You didn't have the.
So let's talk about that. Your first time at the boat. What's that like?
I think it was more for me, it was just more excitement than it was fear. I don't know, maybe I wasn't smart enough to be scared. But
that works though. it just works.
The first time at the boat was, you do so many field carrier landing practice approaches that the numbers are just ingrained in you, and it's almost you just fall back on that training. It's just like rote memorization.
Second nature, yeah.
Yeah. So mostly everything is exactly the same, except when you're looking out the window, you're seeing a ship. So.
But the first time you do it solo, right? There's no instructor to take it if you freak out.
The first time you do it is solo. So, they keep you on a pretty short leash. They're not going to let you get too far off of the perfect parameters. But it's, there's only so much they can do if something goes wrong, right? So It was great. My first time at the boat, it was fantastic. It was one of the best days ever.
Nice. So is it the same as the Navy where how you do at the boat kind of determines what you track after that and kind of your scores there? Or how's the Marine? There weren't a whole lot of options, right? Harriers, Hornets, as far as pointy nose jets.
Hornets, and then we had, at the time, we had Prowlers.
Yeah.
So no, there really wasn't. Your grades while you were in jets kind of determined when you graduated, if you're the first in line to get your first choice, fill out your dream sheet. But that's about it. I don't think they may have, if there was a tiebreaker, they may have taken a guy's boat grades and put them in one platform or another. But yeah.
Wow. So you got Hornets out of T-45s, right? So would you fly the A or?
So I went I first went to Miramar for a year. Flew there in the.
You got your dream shot to Miramar right out the gate?
Right out the gate.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. So went there for a year to VMFAT 101.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of letters.
Yeah. Did that for a year, and then went to Beaufort in South Carolina.
South Kakalaki.
That was my first. In the Marine Corps, we call them fleet. You're in the fleet. That was my first fleet squadron.
Okay.
The Fleet Marine Force. The FMF. So that was my first fleet squadron. Was in Beaufort. I was in a 2-seat 2CD squadron.
So you have Wizzos in the back seat.
You had Wizzos. It was funny because when I was going through Miramar, the last thing you do is you crawl on the boat again in the Hornet.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a big push to get guys out the doors because they were just so far behind in training new aviators that only the guys who were designated to go to boat squadrons were going to actually go to the boat, and the other guys, they were like, just see you later.
Just go. Bye. Get out.
I was one of those. See you later. Get out.
Wow.
So I check into Beaufort and I go to this MAG CO. He's like the oldest, crustiest colonel I've ever seen in my life. He was like literally like the great Santini.
Nice.
And I check into his office and he's like, hey, I'm going to send you to 251. They're getting ready to go to the boat, blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, sir, I don't know if you knew, but oh man, he went through the roof.
Oh.
He went through the roof. So anyways, I ended up going to do a 2C squadron for my first tour. It was awesome.
Non-boat. So the Marines actually have boat and then shore base, right? So
they do. They do. So for the deployments for say non-combat, say peacetime deployments, we have a thing called the UDP program. It's like Unit Deployment Program. And I don't know if they came up with this because there were so many guys sitting around Beaufort flying for 10 years without ever going anywhere. They just dreamt this up. But they would send us for 6 or 7 months over to Iwakuni, Japan.
Okay.
And so we would rotate in and out of Iwakuni, Japan. And then from Iwakuni, we would just det around to individual countries. And, we'd go to Thailand for a month and fly in an exercise. We'd go down to Australia for a month, flying an exercise. And so that's the boat is awesome for the boat experience, but the day-to-day living is kind of a grind. But when you're in UDP is awesome because then you can fly all over the world, flying with other countries, dissimilar aircraft, and then at night you get to sleep in a hotel.
That sounds like the Air Force. It sounds like the Air Force with crayons.
Which is probably why you and I got along so well.
Yeah, right? We have the big picture.
Big picture guys.
Yeah, we understood. I always said it was like prison on water, I felt bad for the guys because I'm like, you guys are just prisoners on this big giant boat.
Everybody says they want to go, they like to go to the boat on one deployment to say they've done it and check the box, but that's it.
We did that week on the TR. And that's as much as I ever want to do in my entire life. I'd rather do 6 months in Al Udeid or Balad or any of those bases than do that again. So you talk about dissimilar. Let's talk about the Hornet. I mean, Hornet's a great airplane. Did you do a lot of dissimilar? And what did you fight with the Hornet?
So for us being in Beaufort, we fought when it came to dissimilar aircraft, we'd fly against the guys out of Shaw.
Oh, the Vipers. Yeah.
Vipers out of Shaw routinely, and then we would fly against the FANG, the Florida Air National Guard, the F-15
Eagles.
guys.
Yep.
So we would do dissimilar with them. Every once in a while, we do some stuff with the Harriers, but they didn't do much air to air, so we didn't.
Did you ever fight the Harrier and they did the nozzle thing where they did that bat turn, that one turn that they had, and then that was it?
No. I fought with them one time, but it was a guy who was just doing his initial air-to-air stuff, and everything was so scripted. I never really saw anything.
So tell me about the Vipers and the Eagles. How'd you do? How did the aircraft do? What did you?
Good. The Air Force guys always go 2 circles, so you can always bank on that. The Eagle guys will try and do the double Immelman, and they will always fail. You just do the high counter, and you just watch him run out of airspeed, and then he just does a little, and then he's just rolling behind him.
That's awesome.
And I knew it. I knew from the brief. I'm like, this guy is a double Immelman guy. He's going to show me how much power the F-15 has. I was like, I know it's going to happen. He hit the first merge. He goes up. I go up to meet him. I'm really slow. And then he just goes back up. And then he gets almost to the top of the second Immelman and he just runs out. He just started. And then as he's falling down, going by me, I key the mic and I go, ooh, worked.
That is awesome. It almost worked. That is amazing. What's the Wizzo doing through all this?
That was during my second tour when I was flying flying back in a single seat squadron.
Yeah, okay.
So there was no Wizzo.
That of course.
But we were in Eglin one time flying against the same guys. I can't remember which squadron it is. There was two there. But I just remember, and I was brand new. I just remember the only thing my Wizzo, who's one of the a squadron instructor, great guy, awesome to fly, one of my favorite guys to fly with. He was like, "Listen, whatever we do, just don't go supersonic." we were just to the east of Eglin.
Yeah.
In that area, I forget what the range was.
The ranges, yeah.
That's the only thing. Just don't do that. And I'm like, no problem.
Did you go supersonic?
So we I don't know. We fought whatever. We get back and we throw in the tapes, and we press play. It was like coming around just to the first merge, and my skipper walks in. And he walks in between us up towards the TV because he was blind. And he's like, "Hey, let me see how this goes." And the Wizzo and I, Nasty, his name is Nasty and I are sitting behind the TVs in the front, the skipper's over there, and we're just looking at the HUD. And it was just like 0.89, 0.9, Mach 95, 6, 7, 9, 9, 10, 101, 102.
Oh no!
Nasty just turns around and looks at me and he's like,
"You had one job."
One job, Nasty. Well, anyways, whatever. So we did. Nobody ever complained, and the skipper, who was 2 feet from the TV, didn't even notice.
So when you were across the pond, did you fight any other non-American aircraft, flankers, MiGs? No,
we didn't. Most of the countries that we went to were all
Hornets.
Flying the same. Yeah. Either the Aussie guys were flying Hornets, the Thai guys had Vipers, which, by the way, the Aussie guys are amazing too, and the Thai guys, though, they're awesome.
Did you like partying with the Aussies?
I like partying with everybody.
That was a stupid question. It's good for the audience, but yeah, knowing you, that's a stupid question. So. After that glorious tour, what is next in the career progression? Did you do ops to ops, or did you?
Yeah, no, I did ops, and then I was a JTAC with 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines up in Camp Lejeune. I did that for a year. I remember my buddy. We were on deployment before this, and he knocked on my door and he's like, "Hey man, I got some bad news." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "I'm getting out of the Marine Corps." I'm like, "Ah, that's too bad." I'm like, "Yeah, but you're a smart guy. You'll do awesome, whatever." He's like, "Yeah, but I'm supposed to go on that FAC tour and you're next in line." And I was like, come on, that's like wait, whatever, blah, blah. So my buddy gets out, and then whatever. We just went on with our lives. We forgot about it when back to the stateside, doing everything, and then all of a sudden, my CEO called me in. He's like, "Hey, I got some news. Great opportunity."
Yeah, that's what you want to hear.
He's like, "Remember Howie?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, he had a FAC tour." I'm like, yeah. And he's like, "Well, we still have to fill it. You're the next guy in line, so you got to go do Howie's FAC tour." He's like, "So it starts in 5 days."
Oh, wow.
So I was like, "Okay, I think I'm going to go home and have a talk with my wife." So anyways, I did that for a year. I did it unaccompanied. So
Oh,
my wife and kids stayed in Beaufort, and
so
I just
for the kids at home, what is a FAC tour, and what did you do during that time?
so a FAC tour is a FAC is a forward air controller. It's just an acronym for a forward air controller. They're also known nowadays as joint terminal air controllers, right? JTAC.
Hmm.
It started in the Marine Corps. Well, I don't even know when, before Vietnam, where they would take aviators and send them to the infantry, and we'd be embedded with the infantry, and we would be the ones we would call in the airstrikes. We would do all the medevac stuff. We'd even do the logistics if we were going to do like a heliborne assault. We'd just prepare all the logistics and stuff for that. So traditionally in the Marine Corps, it would be a winged aviator. But in the advent, after 2003, where we're fighting in Afghanistan and in Iraq and stuff, there just wasn't enough aviators to go around. So they came up with the idea of like, hey, let's start a I don't know if they started a separate school, but they took non-aviators and put them through the Joint Terminal Air Controller School.
I got you.
Mostly the guys, mostly the JTACs were enlisted guys, which is great because as a FAC, I went and I did that for a year, and then I went back to flying.
Yeah.
But JTAC, that was like their
Only job, yeah.
operational specialty. So those guys would, they would do it for years, and they become really, really good. The downside of that is if you're a JTAC in the Marine Corps, you are in high demand in a double wartime, scenario like we've been in or were in for a long time. So the battalion that I was in, we didn't have any JTACs. We just had 3 FACs. It was myself and then 2 other guys. So we were in Camp Lejeune for like 5 months, and then we went over to Iraq for about 6.5 or 7 months.
So what is it like deploying? Are you just embedded? Were you going out on patrols, or what did you?
We would do everything. So we were we'd get attached to the battalion. So every battalion is made up of companies, and the companies are made up of platoons. You can go all the way down to the squad and the fire team. But so 3 of us would be in the battalions, and we would just go to whatever unit, if it was like 3rd platoon or whatever, whoever's doing an op and needed a forward air controller, we would just go with them. Wow. So where we were with the same battalion, we weren't always with the same platoon or company.
What time frame was this in Iraq?
So this was winter of 2005 to I think I got home in just the beginning of September, right before my daughter was born.
So was it fairly active? Did you call in a lot of danger close situations, or?
Yeah, it was weird because I was talking to the FACs who were over there before we had rotated to them. We had rotated over there, so we talked to them all the time, and it was generally like this was Al-Qaim was on the western border of Iraq. So that is like, if you look on the western border of Iraq, right where it has that little niche where it goes from this way to just north and south. There's this little town there, and it was a little border town, and it was pretty sleepy, at least so we thought. But then right around that time, they disbanded the army, and then we started seeing foreign fighters come in from Syria, and that was just their gateway, because it was a checkpoint in peacetime. That was like the road to Syria. So. Yeah. So it became, after we'd gotten there, it really, really became active, to the point where by the time we left 7 months later, there was like a Ranger battalion there, so it went from being nothing, just we lived in a train station. It was a
Yeah.
train station surrounded by concertina wire. So it was a tiny little forward operating base, and then the road up to the train station we used as a runway for the helicopters. So we,
Gotcha.
we had our own detachment of helicopters that was there with us. We had like two Cobras and two Hueys, and they were at our disposal. We worked with them every day.
So is it
So
mostly rotary wing, not like A-10s or Strike Eagles and stuff like that, or?
no, Al Assad was the closest, big air base, and they always had either at least one squadron of Marine F-18s. At some point, they had a squadron of Harriers there too, and they were
Yeah.
always rotating in and out. So we always at least had two squadrons there of fast movers.
Wow. Fast movers. Hey, there you go.
We were-
So, so you finish that and then roll right back into the Hornet?
Yeah, so as soon as I got back, I went back to Beaufort, checked in, and they're like, "Hey, you're going to go to a boat squadron." And
Oh, nice.
I'm like, "Hey, I've already told you guys this. I'm not quelled." So what I did was, after I came back from Iraq, I went up to Oceania and just went through like the same thing you did. I went through with a regular brand new Cat 1 class and just joined them and bounced, and then went out to the boat in the
Wow.
Hornet.
So, did you do a deployment from the boat at that point?
So we were just about getting ready to do workups, and there was a squadron at the time that had just transitioned to Super Hornets,
Yeah.
and they had no tasking. So right before we started doing workups, they pulled us off the air wing, and then they put the Navy Super Hornet squadron in the air wing.
Oh, wow.
So, so we went back over to Japan.
Oh, nice. You got really good deals out of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I think yeah. Was that? I think that was my third time going back to Japan at least.
Were those C
So
models or?
so we started off with A pluses, and then yeah, we had A pluses most of the time. When I was leaving the squadron, we started getting some C's,
Yeah.
but not very many of them. Most of them were A pluses, and the A pluses were awesome.
So
You
was
know,
that? Sorry, go ahead.
no, the A pluses were awesome because they had a super light nose because they didn't have all the avionics for the MPCD in the nose. So it was an awesome airplane to fly, really reliable. Even though it was old, it was really reliable. But we also had the Lightning targeting pod, which was an Air Force pod
Yep.
that the A pluses had.
Yeah.
So when the Marines started buying all of them, but we had them on the A plus too. So it was good. It was great air to air and great with the Lightning pod to do air to ground and forward air controller stuff. So when I got to my squadron, the Marine Corps had realized that, hey, we're going to go away from the two-seat airplanes where the airborne forward air controllers had traditionally been two seats. They
Yeah.
had the OB-10 Bronco guys.
Mm-hmm.
Then now at that point it was the F-18D guys. They realized, hey, we're going to be going mostly to the F-35. So they wanted to do a single seat forward air controller program. And since I'd done the two-seat one in the D model, and I'd just come back from Iraq as a ground fac, they started me up in the single-seat one. So that was a really, really challenge, probably the hardest qualification I've ever had, because they just like the Marine Corps, they just expected one guy to do the job of two. And
Yeah.
they wanted everything. They didn't want any capabilities falling by the wayside. So we had to do everything. Even down to night high threat CAS. So you're on goggles at night, low altitude.
So
So that was really. I think shortly after probably a couple of years later, they just they rolled the program up. They were
Stop
like,
doing it.
it's too much. It's too much because it required other airplanes. Sometimes you'd have to have artillery. Sometimes you'd have to have helicopters, and so yeah, we did that.
So during that time, I mean, what was your most frightening or scariest story in the Hornet?
So, geez, I would say up until that point, probably the scary. Now, I'd had some close passes,
Yeah.
right? And those are usually the scariest. I would say probably there's probably two things that tie. They're not the scariest thing that ever happened to me, but in the Hornet, there's the night cat shot.
Yeah.
To me, was scarier than landing on the boat. Everybody's talking about, flying on the boat at night, it's so scary. But nobody ever said anything about the night cat shot. Okay, to me, that was the scariest thing ever, because you're just blasting off into this abyss, and then once you're off the front of the ship, there's like this big kind of lurch and sudden
You're
feeling
tumbling.
you're not accelerating, you're tumbling, and you're just like, am I going in the water? It's just the worst feeling. So the first night cat shot, and then I would think the second scariest was probably when I was doing night single seat FAC A, and I'm down low altitude flying in the mountains, and we were in the Philippines, and I was looking down at my kneeboard, just trying to do some math, figure out, okay, we're going to get this airplane here and this, and then get all the lasers and stuff. And then I'd look down, and then I just had this feeling like I haven't looked up in a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And I looked up, and I just, I had the goggles on. I just look up, and I just see just this mountain in front of me. And, I was able to clear it, and I didn't make a close pass with the mountain.
Yeah, got your attention.
Had it been another 3 or 4 seconds, I don't know.
Yeah.
May have come in. That was probably the scariest. Not the most nerve-wracking, but the scariest.
Wow. So you did 2 tours and your FAC, or did you do a third before you transitioned over to the Navy?
No, I did. I did my second fleet tour, and that took me to about 13 years active duty.
And then you decided, I'm out. What happened after that?
Then it was, I came home from deployment, and it would have meant, as soon as I got home, like moving to California or something to be a flight instructor, at 101 and stuff. Or it would have meant extending for a year. But once at that point in time, if you had really nothing, if I would have extended a year, I would have been, they were always pulling guys out for these individual augmentations.
Oh yeah.
Where they just come and just rip you out of the womb of your squadron, and then you'd be an LUD, putting up some general's PowerPoint and delivering it to them at 4 a.m. So neither of those had really, I just needed a break at that point, because my peers, most of them had, gone to a fleet tour, then they'd either gone to be a flight instructor for 2 or 3 years, they're home every night, they're flying, or they went to, a year-long school where they're just sitting in class for a year, whatever. But going doing those 2 deployments, then doing a year on a company, the FAC tour, then coming back, doing another deployment, and then just coming home and having to move or potentially do another combat deployment. I was just like,
you've done your time.
I'm done. So they did ask me if I wanted to extend and be the XO of our squadron for a year, but something just told me that I would somehow end up,
getting pulled.
Doing some PowerPoint. So yeah, we got out and spent, fair, I don't know, maybe 9 months. It was right during the downturn. So I flew the C-12 and the Hornet in Beaufort as a reservist. I was
Oh,
really
okay.
really a C-12
Yeah.
reservist, but we kind of wiggled our way into, because at that time there were so many guys doing, augmented, we're deployed and stuff. There really weren't a lot of instructors left,
Mm,
on the base. So we kind of wiggled our way to
nice.
continue flying the Hornet. So that was nice. But eventually I had to get a real job, and there really weren't any jobs in Beaufort, so we had to move on.
So what prompted you to switch to the Navy Reserve and the F-5?
Well, um, I had thought about joining this particular unit, Marine unit, and as a reservist, but they were activating for a year and they were going out, and I was like, well, I mean, that defeats the purpose.
Yeah,
I,
that's why I got out. Yeah, I just
yeah,
got out for
I
this.
came back from deployment. I don't need to, activate for a year. And I just started a new job with Lockheed Martin, so it really wasn't even in the cards for me to just kind of quit. Not that I wanted to, and I didn't. So it was funny because one of my buddies from Beaufort had transitioned flying the F-5 down in Key West, and he must have talked to somebody, because literally it was like the day after I decided, that I wasn't going to go on deployment again. He called me and he's like, "Hey, heard you're looking for a flying job," and I was like, "How'd you know?" I'm like, he's like,
God,
I
is
can't
that
even
you?
remember. Yeah, I can't even remember what he said, but yeah, he's like, "Come on down to Key West and check it out. I think you're gonna like it." And I was like,
Key West
"Oh,
is nice. Yeah.
okay." So, I went down there. The F-5, I've always loved the F-5.
Yeah.
It's just such. I mean, it looks like it's going supersonic just sitting
Yeah.
around the. So I went down there, and it's Key West. The flying is awesome. They're like, okay, our airplanes never break. They're like, if you want to fly 3 times a day, you can fly 3 times a day. We have money, we'll buy you, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was just, I was like, okay, I'm in.
Well, what was it
So,
like flying the F-5? How'd you, I mean, as far as
so
just sticking rudder and getting used
yeah,
to not having all the toys?
the F-5 was, it didn't have the protections that the F-18 has, as far as the flight control logic, the
Yeah.
having the computer in the loop, not letting you it wouldn't let
Yeah.
you rip the wings off.
De-
The F-5 will let you do whatever you want. It'll
de-
let you do it.
departure spin is like 27 steps, right? It's like stick forward, stick aft, turn left.
The spin, it would take you a minute to say it it's like as fast as you could. It would just go on forever and ever. So the F-5 was really cool, though. It was, super easy to start. You get in and you're taxiing in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, it was, you definitely had to watch it,
Mm.
because you could get into the mindset of, hey, I'm in an F-18 and I'm just going to rip it over the top and just pull as hard as I can. And I did that, and it didn't work out well. As a matter of So that was probably the scariest flight that I'd ever had in the F-5. And it so I was fighting with the guy, and he's higher than I am, and I just pulled to try and get inside of him, and I mean, the airplane just, it doesn't rumble, it just instant inverted spin.
Oh God.
So I'm in this inverted spin, and I was in such a rush to get out of the line that I didn't take my lap belts, and I didn't cinch them down.
Ooh.
So I was just out of the seat, and I just remember Potsy, and he's like, I can't remember what he do. He said, like, stick full forward. He's like, so in his mind, he's just saying the spin recovery procedures just because
Yeah.
just to make sure we're on the, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm just listening to him, and whatever he said, and I think he said stick full forward or whatever. And I remember to him, and I was like, wait, no, that's not right, because I'm inverted. And I pulled back, and so I'm spinning around and Potsy is like cruising around me. And I'm
Yeah.
spinning. He's like cruising around and he's like, okay, you're at 17,000, you're 11,000. And I remember thinking to myself, is this really happening? Is
Yeah.
this,
Time
am I
compression.
really? And it felt like the seat and my butt were about this far away from each other. And the seats that they had in those airplanes were the old Martin Baker ones. Wasn't like a multi-stage where, I mean, it was just like,
You wear the chute, right? You guys are wearing it's like the T-38 seat. Yeah.
they called it the backbreaker. And I'm like, is this really happening? I'm like, I am so far out of position because my lap belts weren't tight. I was like, I'm going to break my back. And I remember thinking, and the skipper, he is going to be so pissed.
The skipper's gonna be pissed.
I mean, you hear that guy, he's such a nice guy. He's like, yeah, come join my squadron. Deep six one of his airplanes.
He's gonna...
I can't remember the exact altitude we were supposed to at that time, because they changed different airplanes or whatever the altitude was, that was like, if you're still out of control, eject. We passed that altitude.
Yeah.
And I remember like Potsy was like, hey, okay, you're at this altitude, which was the ejection altitude. And I was just like, is this really happening? And I was like, I'll give it another couple of potatoes. And I think I thought, okay, if I see 4,000 or 5,000, I'm going to get out, which I think the ejection altitude was like 10. And I mean, literally probably within 2 potatoes of me reaching for the ejection handle, which I didn't even know if I was going to be able to reach. The airplane just snapped right out of it and then just started flying again.
Holy crap.
It was just amazing. It was amazing. So that was good news.
Yeah.
I was happy that happened. And then, so I'm climbing back up and Potsy's like, so do you want to go home? I'm like, yeah, dude.
I want to go home.
Let's go back to base, man. I'm done. So yeah, they were like, we talked about it. We had an all officers meeting, like the next time that we had an all officers meeting, we talked about what happened and whatever. And apparently they always said, like, I was the first guy ever to get out of an inverted spin in the F-5. They're like, wow. Dude, nobody's ever done it. Nobody's ever done it and gotten out. And so,
wow,
that was my scariest flight.
Wow.
And yes, those stupid, out of control recovery procedures are insanely long.
Yeah, it's like 47 steps or something. Every brief, when they'd have to say them, I'm like, God.
Yeah. Well, and apparently they're hard to get right, even if you're not the guy in the spin.
Yeah, so, Jesus.
I mean,
well, so I mean, just F-5 in general, it's got a radar. How is it? I mean, it's
got a really bad radar. It's just a pulse Doppler radar. Just sends out a beam, waits for a return, and then on the radar scope, it just gives you a raw blip.
Yeah.
It'll show you where somebody is in azimuth, but it really doesn't tell you, it doesn't give you much range. You can kind of decipher a little altitude split, but it's not like it goes through a computer and it processes something and then it'll give you like a closure rating,
Right. You're not locking anything. Yeah. So what was it like dogfighting Hornets?
So the Hornet is, if you get a guy who's capable in the Hornet, it's 2 equal guys. It's just no contest. The Hornet will just crush the F-5 because the F-5 just doesn't have the thrust that the Hornet does. So once the F-5 gets slow, it's really it's a dog to get it to go back.
Could you rate around? I mean, was it a decent like rate fighter or anything?
We rate around, and I think what really got us the most kills was one. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, it's an F-5." They're hard to see, they're tiny, And most of the fleet guys, they do air to air, but they're doing air to ground. They're doing a lot of other stuff. But that's all we did.
Yeah.
If they wanted a certain replication of some kind of aircraft, I mean, it's literally all we did. So we didn't even have to think about it. So yeah, they have the radar missiles. Obviously, there's nothing the F-5 is going to do about that. But in close, the biggest challenge was for them to keep sight.
Yeah.
You lose sight. Doesn't matter what kind of airplane the guy's flying, he's going to end up behind you anyways.
Yeah.
So that was probably the biggest one. Plus, you get new guys that are flying the Hornet, and they're just like, they just think the F-5 and the guy are just so much better. They're like, oh my god,
it's all mental.
Like 3,000 hours, and yeah, by that time it becomes mental.
Was it like a 7.5G airplane?
It was 7.5G. There was no G limiter. We just had this little needle that would just go. So
Yeah.
By the time usually guys were flying the F-5, they'd had so much time in other aircraft that when you're getting above 7 Gs,
was the chute, I mean, because that, like in the T-38, it kind of creates a fulcrum, and it gives you a lot of people neck problems and back problems and stuff. Was the chute a problem in that airplane for you?
It was not for me, but the guys who flew it for a lot longer than I did, it did become a problem.
Yeah.
Because we took ours all the way to the paraloft. So
yeah,
we hauled them out to the jet.
We did too. Yeah, we carry it all the way back and forth, and you're cinched down, so it's kind of hunching you down. And then if you do any fighting or anything, you're looking over your shoulder. You got that big parachute behind you.
Yeah, no, we had the same problem. So there are a lot of guys who had back and neck problems.
Yeah,
because of the parachute. But a lot of guys had back and neck problems.
Just in general. Yeah.
Yeah, in general. So.
What?
The parachute didn't help them.
What made you leave that and come fly Hornets at Strike Fatron 204?
So Smitty.
Yeah, I know Smitty.
Smitty, the funny guy he is. So at the time, I also fly for the airlines, and I was based up in Anchorage. So I was commuting between Anchorage, my home in Dallas, Key West, and it was the triangle of pain, right? So Smitty was like, hey, so Smitty was in he was in flying F-5s, and then he goes over to 204, and he's like, Special, come on up. It's so great up here. We're gonna go bombing, we're doing all this stuff, and he's like, and it's close to Memphis, because Memphis and New Orleans had the flight, and then you go to Dallas. He's like, it'll be super easy. I mean, I was like, easy, boy, that sounds nice. I was like, commuting being easy. So plus the thought of getting back in the Hornet and doing air to ground, which I it's probably my first love. Just sounded awesome. And the F-5s were awesome. The squadron in Key West was awesome. The dudes were awesome. Yeah. So I actually flew an F-5 up to New Orleans to meet the skipper and
nice
do everything. So yeah. So and it was good. It was good.
And you retired out of New Orleans, right? That was your last.
Did about 5 years in New Orleans.
What obviously I got to ask, what was your favorite flight in New
my
Orleans?
Favorite flight mover, I think I have a picture of it here somewhere. Oh no, but so my favorite flight, obviously, was with you when we and I'll never forget your quote. So we go up and we're flying Strikers with the militia down there, the coon-ass militia, the F-15 guys. So we're flying the Striker mission, and then we do that. And then those guys were like, hey, do you want to split up and do individual 1v1s? And we're like, yes.
Yeah.
So we split up with those guys. We each fought an eagle, and then those guys left. And then you and I had more gas, and we're like, dude, you want to fight a little bit? So you and I fought, and then we're like, all right, let's go do the low level. And then you led on the low level, where we went north of the
North Shore down the causeway at 500 feet, splitting the causeway.
North Shore down the causeway, and then we did the little city tour around the Saints thing. And
Superdome.
I remember you saying, do you think this is our last flight and we just don't know it? It was such a monumental, awesome flight that it was like only something that somebody gets on the last flight.
Yeah, dude. We went out. We were the strikers. We shot the Red Air in the face. The Eagles couldn't protect us. We were defending ourselves. You know, we got to BFM. We got to simulate a strike, and we got to fly a low level. Dude, I still look back at that. The only downside was like they called us. They're like, "You guys gonna come debrief?" Remember the debrief? And they got mad at you. They're like, "Well, where's your shot data?"
We're like, shot data? I mean, come on, we just did a low level.
Yeah. What are you talking about, shot data? This is...
We were out there having fun.
Yeah. This is supposed to be fun. What are you, debriefing? That's crazy.
Nobody said we were supposed to draw out learning points and bring them.
Yeah. Well, so I always ask this question. A lot of the theme that we've taken on this channel is make them tell you no. And that usually is some level of adversity you've overcome where, you know, somebody's told you no, but you overcame and you let the person that could actually make the decision tell you no by not telling yourself no. Do you have any stories of, in your path to becoming a fighter pilot, overcoming a challenge or adversity to get where you are?
Yeah, so I told you about our friends who were the Navy pilots, you know, lived across the street. So naturally, my first inclination was to go to the recruiter. The Navy recruiter. And so I did, and I can't remember if I had my transcripts or he just asked me about it. And I told you, he's like, yeah, what's your GPA? And I told him, he was like,
he laughed at you.
He's like, okay, what are your SAT scores? So I told him, and he was like, he said to me, he goes, there's just no way. There is just no way. So I was like, man, no way. So I think that that I kind of, not that I didn't give up, but it kind of put me back into back to the drawing board mode. You know, I was like, oh gosh, what am I? Like, there's got to be some way. There's got to be something. So, you know, I was doing my civilian flying and stuff, which I loved. It was some of the best flying that I've done. So I was doing that at the time too, going through school. And then one of my buddies came. I remember the Navy recruiter. I do remember the last thing he said to me was, hey, maybe you want to go down the hall and talk to the Marines.
Well, that worked. So
to which I said, I was thinking to myself, there is no effing way I'm going to join the Marines. Those guys are crazy. I walked out of the recruiter's office. So I think about a year later, maybe it was a year later, different area that, you know, that was a recruiter in my hometown. Now I'm at school. My buddy walks in the door and he goes, hey, look what I found. It was like this yellow sheet of paper. And it was like in block letters, like, pilots needed, F-18, C-130, come see Staff Sergeant Weed. So my buddy who wasn't interested in aviation, he came home and he's like, hey, look what I just saw. I was like, I'm going to see Staff Sergeant
Weed.
Yeah, so I blasted in his office, and you know, we talked for whatever.
Wow.
A long time. And I was like, I was I was sold. The Staff Sergeant Weed he was such a sharp looking, great dude. I mean, like a ball, it was like a ball of energy. And he was just so motivated. And he's like, what do you want to fly? And I'm like, oh, I'd like to fly F-18s. And, you know, I figured he'd be like, yeah, say something like the Navy guy, like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there's just no way. So, and he was like, absolutely.
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm like, yes. So, you know, he gave me bunches of forms and, you know, so I had to do the whole application process. And then I got a letter of recommendation from our friends who he retired as a 2-star admiral. And that's the guy, Staff Sergeant Weedy goes, he's like, you know, Edwards, he's like, the Marine Corps doesn't always think that the guy with the best grades is the best leader. And we're looking for leadership. And
Nice.
he's like, they're going to find out in OCS. And
Dude,
and I'm like, all right, well, whatever. Let's do it. Why not?
Awesome.
So,
and what all have you flown, civilian and military? Obviously, you're an airline pilot now. What all are your F-18, F-5? What are your airliners that you've flown so far?
The B-12, which was a King Air 200, MD-11, and now the 767.
Nice. Okay. What is family friendly? We can't say Chuck Yeager on the channel, but do you have a family friendly version of why you're called special that you could share?
Actually, this isn't really even bad. This is family friendly. So, they used, because my name's Edwards, I don't know, they started calling me Ed, you know, around the squadron. I don't know, I think it might have just been even one instructor who was like, hey Ed, he just always called me Ed, whatever. So when we were training to go to the boat, they have all these cards, and every time you do a landing, there's a guy out there, you know, writing it down, like, hey, you started out high, then you got slow, then you got low, and then so, and just so they can look and see trends, you know, if the guy's always starting out high and going low. Anyways, so the night afterwards, he's like, or, you know, at the end of the night, he's like, Ed, you keep all the grade cards, bring them back in the morning, because we're going to fly the next morning. So I had all the grade cards sitting in front of me the next morning, and I just had this giant cup of coffee. And I was standing there. He's like, hey, where's the grade cards, Ed? And then I just stood there and I just took a bow over the grade cards. And this giant cup of coffee just went all over everything. So I'm picking up these grade cards and they're sopped with coffee, and I'm just like wringing them out. And I'm like, here's the grade cards. He looked at things and he's like, what? No, you really are special.
That is awesome.
And then it just stuck, you know. Somebody says something like that, and then the next day, you know, when they're putting out the flight cards, somebody just writes, you know, special. And then it sticks. And then when I went to my first, oddly enough, when I went to my first fleet squadron in Beaufort, it's traditional to do a call sign review for the new guy. So usually if it's his first squadron. So I got there and they did this call sign review, which means, you know, there's a whiteboard and guys just go up and say, yeah, I think we should call him
right.
This, that, nothing good. Good. And so the skipper walked in and he's like, hey, call sign review for the new guy. And he's like, he's looking at all, he's laughing. He's like, oh man, that'd be great. He's laughing. He's like, my best friend, Marine fighter pilot, just retired after 25 years, and his call sign was special. So your new call sign is special. And everybody was like, A skipper, his name is already special. And he was like, very well.
Well, yeah, it's obviously ordained. Yeah.
Yeah, so I got it twice.
Wow. Dude,
Yeah.
that is awesome. Well, dude, I loved your stories. It's been awesome. If you have time, I'd like to hand it over to the chat and ask you questions from the chat. And the rules for that is, don't be a douche. Use Super Chat if you want to make sure your question gets answered. So let's begin. Any questions from the chat that we have?
Can I see the chat?
You can't. Well, if you go to the video, you can. Do you still have the video up?
Yeah, I do. But then you'll hear it, and then you'll hear yourself.
You'd have to mute it. Aviator Boss says, "How many tours have you done?" I'm not sure what kind of tours we're asking. So, I mean, I guess sandbox tours. How many tours did you end up doing?
Yeah, so I did technically 2, because my first fleet squadron in the winter of 2002, we deployed over to Japan. Japan had a fleet squadron there that was permanently based, and they went to Kuwait to do Operation Southern Watch, and then Operation Enduring Freedom, right? OEF? What was in Afghanistan? I forget right now.
Yeah, it's Enduring Freedom.
Enduring Freedom. So they were going to support both. So for whatever reason, I got what we call cross-decked over to their squadron and went to Kuwait. And then we did Southern Watch. And then we flew, 11.5-hour missions from Kuwait to Afghanistan. We do, on-call casts, and then we fly all the way back. So we'd take off as the sun was setting, and then we'd be landing back in Kuwait as the sun's rising. So I did that, and then after that squadron, I did the Factor over with the infantry.
There's a lot of interest on what that aircraft is behind you. Is there a story?
So that DC-6, right?
Okay.
DC-6. There's no story behind it. My wife saw it and was like, "Hey, I bought it for me," and we put it up.
Yeah.
It's cool. I think it's a 6. It's a DC-6.
That's
the
chat
was dragger, right?
Yeah, the chat believes that as well. Let's see. What aircraft would you fly? So if you had any kind of airplane, what would you fly if you had the opportunity?
Okay. Are we just talking military airplanes or
either? Any aircraft.
I think if I could fly any aircraft right now, it would be the F-7U Corsair.
Wow.
Yeah.
That would be. You ought to start a foundation, and then we'll buy one.
I think that's a good idea. We'll talk offline.
The special foundation.
And make that happen.
Yeah. Randy wants to know, have you been in a dogfight? That's usually not very common in the last 40 years, but I'll ask it anyway.
No, not that I'm aware of anyways.
Yeah. Not that I know of. I mean, military jet wise, is there new or old, like newer stuff? Is there anything you'd rather fly? Like, would you fly the Raptor or Fat Amy or the Super Hornet?
I think the A-10 would be.
Yeah.
That would be the airplane that I would like to fly.
Yeah.
Those are awesome.
Let's see. We'll take a couple more questions. Somebody goes, how many Pepsi points do you think an F7 costs? You remember that? You remember that guy they got the Harrier?
Oh yeah, the guy who bought the Harrier.
No, not bought it. He got the Pepsi points. So they were like, if you get so many Pepsi points, they had the Harrier commercial or whatever, and this kid got enough Pepsi points, so he sued him because they wouldn't give him a Harrier. Capstar wants to know, what Marine unit were you attached to when you were JTAC? He said he caught the 3rd Marines but missed the platoon.
No, it was the battalion.
It was the battalion.
3rd Battalion.
3rd Battalion. Got it.
2nd Marine Regiment.
Have you ever had any interest in flying helicopters?
Yes. Yeah. I love helicopters.
Yeah? Have you thought about doing it?
Yeah, it's just so, I always loved the little birds,
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
the
Little,
160th flew around.
yeah.
And I've seen those guys fly. And when we were in Iraq, they came and they were awesome. They were awesome. Um, but I think just getting to that point where I am now, I mean, I'd probably have to go do a Robinson, the R, whatever,
That's what I'm
40.
doing right now.
I mean,
You can use the GI Bill there in Fort Worth. I can give you their information. Epic
I'm gonna get
helicopters.
roasted. My
No,
son,
really?
Bill.
Oh,
But no,
kids.
I would love to. I would
Yeah.
love to, and I'm going to. When I was in Iraq, I got to fly a Cobra. I was in the front seat, but there's these little controls. It's hard to fly, but you can do it
That's
from
awesome.
the seat. And it was fun. Got to shoot the gun and rocket. So yes, the helicopters.
Awesome. All right, let's take a couple more questions that haven't already been answered. Uh, do you have an opinion on UAVs like the MQ-9?
As far as the difference between the MQ-9 and other UAVs,
I
or do
think
I
it just
think it's awesome?
general opinion. What do you think about UAVs?
I think they're awesome. So when I was at JTAC, I had this thing and it had just come out. It was called a Rover. So and they just dropped it on my lap and they're just like
Here you go.
the directions. I was like, what the heck? So the Rover was awesome. It was a Panasonic Toughbook, and then we plugged it into whatever this box, and from the box we had this antenna,
Yeah.
and then you could dial in a frequency, and you could have a Reaper flying overhead. They could be overhead, and I just look at my laptop, and I could see what they were looking at.
That's awesome.
So in the F-18s, then anybody who had a lightning pod could do it, could transmit it, and actually made it really easy because I could give them a coordinate, they could look at something, and I could say, okay, go, you see the building in the top left corner of your screen, and they would just zip up to it, and you'd be like, that's your target.
Nice.
So it was great, and it was really good for surveillance too.
Yeah.
So the Reapers are awesome because they can fly overhead and nobody hears them. And then when they shoot their Hellfire, which we had them do, it would just sound like a rifle in the sky.
Nice.
It was crazy. Yeah. So UAVs are awesome.
Joseph wants to know how many hours you ended up accruing in your various F-5 and F-18.
I think I ended up with about 600 hours in the F-5, and then boy, the F-18, I didn't even look after my last flight. Maybe 25 or 2,600 hours.
Okay. And what kind of flying do you do in the 7.6? Is it mostly international?
So I just changed from the MD-11, which I did mostly international,
Yeah.
to the 7.6. So actually, I just got out of training. I haven't even
flown it yet. Yeah.
No,
Awesome.
I've flown. I just got off of IOE. So
Is it a set? Do you guys do the 7.5, 7.6, or is it just one or the other?
we did, but we do not anymore.
Wow.
Now it's a separate bid pack.
Well, Special, I appreciate it. Before we go, the last question I always ask, do you have any advice for somebody who's aspiring to be in your shoes or somebody who wants to maybe consider becoming a fighter pilot? Any parting words of wisdom for the next generation?
Yeah, I would say, just just keep plugging along at it. Doesn't matter what anybody says. If there are naysayers out there or people who are skeptical or whatever, just ignore everybody and just keep going for it. Because there is always a way. 100%, there is always a way. Unless it's like something beyond your control, like something that's medically disqualifying. There's always a way.
Awesome.
There's always a way. If somebody says no, just go to the next door and just keep pounding on it. And if your dream is to fly one certain aircraft and for whatever reason it's not working out, just look at something else, because you think you're in love with something and then you'll see other missions, and you'll be like, wow, I didn't even realize that. That is really awesome. So just keep plugging along.
Awesome. Well, Special, I appreciate it, man. You're awesome. Thanks for everything. Glad to have you on the channel. It's been an awesome interview. Thanks so much.
All right. See you, buddy.
See ya. And thank you, everybody. Excuse me. Oh, no. Oh! Been a lot of that.
Perfectly fine with the doors off. All 5 feet. Don't be a douche. Rule number 1.
Make them tell you no.